All
ask
right.
away, Tom. That's why I brought Carl in.
All right. Well, hi, Carl. Thanks for your help. I was just curious about how the protocol for CW would go in the event that you were actually engaged in some kind of crisis situation like a earthquake. I mean, using it for personal means maybe to help neighbors connect with their families out of state, things like not like some part of some official disaster preparedness organization. But in the event that I wanted to try to like reach out to other people in the country to make contact, what's the protocol for doing that? How does that whole thing work?
Okay, and that's why I brought Carl in, because if you're doing something like that, you are most likely going to be operating in some kind of official capacity. Because it's not just random, contacts. It's not just random information. It's really important. Carl, take it away.
Well, in the event of an actual emergency, there will be chaos, and that's to be expected, and it'll be difficult to deal with. And the goal that every operator should have should be to reduce that level of chaos to a manageable uh, communication protocol of some kind. That's not necessarily easy, but it will eventually come about. And that's why we have groups like ARIES that train and practice for situations so that when it becomes necessary to handle a situation, you've got people that are kind of used to those protocols. Uh, what I am most familiar with is the protocols for traffic nets. Traffic net is an organized on the air meeting that is set up to pass messages in a reliable and organized way among stations. There are many different kinds of nets. Some of them are social, some of them are informal, and you can organize a net for anything you like. But a traffic net is typically what we call a directed net, which means there is a net control station who's in charge of the operation of the net. All activity on the net should be under the direction of the net control station. And there are uh, well agreed protocols that are used for doing that. Now, I hope Scott has taught you about some Q signals during this presentation. You probably know QTH, which means my location is, or with a question mark, what is your location? You probably know some others like QRS, which means please send slower. Uh,
QSL.
and what's that, Scott?
QSL.
QSL, which means I acknowledge receipt of your transmission. There are a set of Q signals which are particularly appropriate for net operations, one of which is part of the standard QSL group called QTC, and that's short for traffic. QTC means I have formal traffic for someone. And so you might, when you get a call to check into a net, I'll talk about that in a minute, you might check in and say QTC3 N7JI. That means I have 3 messages for N7JI. Now, I would do that if I have a reasonable expectation that N7JI will actually be on the net or somebody who knows how to get a hold of him. If not, I would say QTC3 Eugene. And that means those messages would be picked up by somebody who could forward them to Eugene. Now, what do we mean by forwarding a message? That has become rather ambiguous in this day and age where we have instantaneous worldwide communication at our fingertips. We have these little boxes that we keep in our pockets. Why is mine blinking that way? Never mind. I can call anybody, anywhere, anytime, and that's great. And when a message comes to me for Eugene, it will often come with a phone number. That's the traditional way of addressing traffic messages, except The only problem is nobody anymore ever answers their phone, and I hate talking to a voicemail. I'm never sure if I'm getting through to the person. If the person on the other end is not an amateur, they might even not know what I'm talking about. So usually I will try to find an email address for them and just email them. And so you might ask, well, why bother using the radio if you're just going to email somebody? And my best answer for that is it's fun, but some people don't like to hear that. Our section traffic manager, for instance, would have a cow if he heard me saying this was fun, because
I'm not going to tell him.
he doesn't like people having fun. But we'll leave him out of this discussion. Morse code is fun. There is no getting around it, and I like doing it whenever I can for whatever reason. So QTC is an important Q code to know, but there are a set of signals called QN signals, and you can look them up on Google by looking for ARRL QN signals. And you'll find a whole list of signals, some of which I can't remember. Most important one is, well, there's a couple, but one of the most important ones is QNI, which is a call by the net control station for stations to check in. Actually, one you'll hear earlier is QND, which means this is a directed net. So when I start a net, which I do several times a week, and Scott's got them up on the screen, I will say, blah, 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 this is Oregon section net, yada, 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 QND, and please QN Z, which is please zero beat the net control station, because you don't want to be too far off frequency. And then I'll sign my call sign, and then I'll call for, well, usually I don't call QNI right away. The thing I start with is QNA. Now you got to go back to the top of your list. QNA is a request for stations to answer in a prearranged order. I will ask for QNA any QTC question mark. And that's an invitation at the very beginning of the net for any stations that are holding traffic to announce their presence and announce their traffic. And when I'm done with those, I will then say QNA, and I'll list a number of stations that I know are likely to be there from Oregon: W7EES, K7YIC, et cetera, et cetera. And I will take them in that order with QNA. And that's all beautiful and wonderful. Once I get through those, then I will give my call sign again. I'll say CQ Oregon Section Net, DEWS7L. And then I'll say QNI question mark. QNI is a request for stations to report into the net. That's an invitation for anybody on frequency to check in. And usually we'll get at that point several stations from Washington. I don't normally list the Washington stations on the roll call. Opinions differ on whether that should be done, and I'm not going to get into the politics of that because it bores me and irritates me. But I'll call QNI, and I'll get several stations from Washington that'll pile on top of each other, and I'll have to kind of straighten them out. Now, going back to the beginning, if anybody answered my request for QTCs,
and everybody, again, what does QTC mean?
QTC means I have.
No, not you, not you. Everybody.
Oh, you're asking your students. Sorry.
Yeah. What does QTC mean again?
I have traffic.
I have traffic.
I have traffic.
I have traffic.
And I skipped ahead a little bit because before calling QNI, I would try to dispatch that traffic. If somebody had said QTC3 N7JI, I would then say QNA N7JI question mark. That means N7JI, please report in. QNA is a request to report in a defined order. And if Scott pipes up and gives his call sign, then I would instruct him and that other station to go off frequency a couple kilohertz to handle that traffic. There are several Q signals used to do that. QNR is one, which means please answer blah, blah, and handle traffic. So I would say, W7EESQNR N7JI or something like that. And honestly, I can never remember all the different Q signals for sending people off frequency to handle traffic. There's a bunch of them, and I always get them confused. I have to keep a sheet handy in case somebody uses one of them on me. I will usually use QNR, which instructs a particular station to answer another station and handle the traffic. And usually I'll give a frequency like down 3, DN3, which will mean down 3. That will get them off the net frequency. They can do their business while the rest of us are handling whatever else the net has to do. So that's a very typical net protocol. The other QN signal that is very commonly used is QNX, Quebec November X-ray, which means you are excused from the net, and that's done. You can excuse a station anytime, but usually it's done at the end of the net. I will call for check-ins. When there are no more check-ins, I'll say all stations QNX 73, good night, bye-bye, whatever. And one final Q signal that's a QN signal is QNF, Quebec November Fox, which means that the net frequency is now free. That is the signal for closing the net. So that's the mechanism of handling a CW net. I didn't say a lot about why we might want to do that, apart from it's fun. But
I should point out that there are local nets, there are regional nets, there are national nets, and traffic. If you want to think of how mail gets handled, sometimes it goes long distance, sometimes it goes from the post office to the house, sometimes it goes from Eugene to Portland by truck. So, Carl, do you get involved in local and regional?
I'm just involved locally. I occasionally go to the region net, but that's a fairly rare occurrence. I decided long ago that was a level I didn't really want to get involved with. I was happy doing what I was doing, and people kept telling me, "Oh, you should really be going to the region net." And I'm like, "Nah." People keep telling me things I have to do, and I don't always agree, because you're all in charge of what you personally do, and you shouldn't let people boss you around just because they think you should do something. You should do what you want to do, not what other people think you want to do. But there is a hierarchy of nets that meet at a certain schedule. There are section nets like Oregon Section Net, which is the one I'm involved with, that covers the state of Oregon, typically handles messages coming into and out of Oregon. We don't really want to handle a message between two stations in Oregon. I mean, we will if it comes to it, but generally we got things coming in from other states. Next level up is a region net. There's a region 7 net, which you can guess what region 7 is if you know what the FCC regions are. Above that, there's the Pacific Area net, which is a wider thing that includes, I don't know who all, probably California and Hawaii, and I don't know. And then for above that level, messages go to a transcontinental core, which are stations that are equipped for transcontinental conversation. And these are people that usually have pretty capable stations with good antennas and good power, where they can almost daily be confident of communicating coast to coast, and they can pass messages to the East Coast. So if I have a message for somebody in Massachusetts, I'll check in and say QTC1MA, and that'll go up to the region net. Now, it might be that one of the transcontinental people will be checked into that region net. You can short circuit this process at any point you like, but the protocol would be to go from the region net to the area net up to the transcontinental net and then back down. But I don't hold that that is always required. There might be somebody who disagrees with me on that. Scott knows who that person would be, but I think
and we love him. He's just
you dispatch the traffic in the most effective way that you can.
Yes.
So that's a lot of stuff about how traffic nets operate. As far as how messages are formatted.
Yeah. So what's the format? What's the format of a message?
Yeah, the format of a message is very simple. We call it a radiogram format, and you can look on the net and find the ARRL radiogram format. It has a header that includes the station being addressed, the station originating, the priority of the message. You can declare a message to be a priority message or an emergency message. Most of them are called routine. There's some other gibberish that can be in there, like do you want to get an acknowledgement when the message was delivered, etc. There's also a way of telling a person, if you can't deliver this within 2 days, forget about it. And Scott's bringing that up on the screen.
There it is.
A check is a word count, so that the person receiving that, they're going to fill out the words in the message on those blank lines indicated below. And when they're done, they're going to count the check out and make sure it agrees. If it doesn't, they're going to ask to make sure they got the message correctly. And there is a protocol for requesting repeats of things that you didn't hear. It's fairly simple. Like there's a WA and WB, word after and word before. So I can give a word, say a word after THE, word after the.
Can you also do AA and AB? All
or
after,
you can
all
do
before?
all after, all before. There's a few little protocols like that you use to get repeats, because sometimes there's static and crashes and people are fading in and out. And it's just all kinds of fun. You list the time and date of the message, and then an addressee. Typically, that is a name, and if applicable, a call sign. You give an address and a phone number, typically. Now, in the modern era, you typically will also give an email address. And there are shorthand messages, like Scott's typing a happy birthday. There's probably a shorthand message for that. There are a number of things called ARL codes for shorthand. So you might just send ARL 49 or 47 or whatever it is, and that's a happy birthday. And so you can sometimes shorten your transmissions by using the ARL shortcuts.
Do you bother with punctuation?
Usually you ignore punctuation. You will use an X-ray for a period. Period is not regarded as a reliable character, apparently. I don't know why. It just goes back to telegraph history, but X-ray is essentially a period.
So like that,
End of
counted
sentence.
as a
Yeah.
word?
Yeah, happy birthday, Joe X-ray. And the way I would read that is happy birthday, Joe X-ray, or in Morse code, I would send those all versus out in code, X-ray being da 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 da. Hope to see you in Xenia, X-ray. And 73, that's very often the last word in a message because now I'm trying to remember, is the signature normally considered to be part of the message?
Probably not.
I'm forgetting that. See, I don't know as much as Scott thinks I do.
So what is HX up here?
HX is handling instructions.
Okay.
Those are things like discard if undeliverable. Like you've got a phone number that's disconnected and you can't find the person to give the message to, and what do? There's a code that says send a message back to the originating station telling them sorry, couldn't deliver. There's another one that just says, yeah, forget about it if you can't deliver it, which is most typical. I think that's Hotel X-ray Golf, if I remember. And there are some other Hotel X-rays in there. What else am I forgetting? One important factor that's coming into play nowadays as more and more amateurs are interacting with other served agencies in the emergency environment, this radiogram format does not comply with the message format that's being used by all the other agencies. There's an ICS number, something or other, message form that is used by FEMA and other people. You will probably find if you take some kind of Aries training that there will be people teaching you how to use ICS. I think it's ICS 213, which is another standardized message format. And I think if you're working with those people, you should probably use the message formats that they prefer. I'm not educated on that subject, but I just wanted to mention that that's out there and usable. So if you do get into an actual emergency, that will be something to think about. Now, it's rather unlikely that there will be a lot of CW activity in a real emergency. Most emergency traffic is handled by voice or digital modes just because of the lack of CW operators. There was probably a time when CW was very important, like when the Titanic was sinking, they sent for distress calls on CW. Actually, it was Spark back then, not really CW, but the distinction is something we won't belabor at this point. But as technologies advance, I mean, CW is kind of an old-fashioned thing. It's 100 years old, and
it's 180 years old. Thank you.
Well, it depends on how you define it.
Yeah.
You know, CW really took over when they developed radios that could perform narrowband types of operations, not just Spark, but actually had tube oscillators.
Well, we think of Morse.
Yeah,
Morse
Morse code was sent by a Spark, but it was technically not CW.
Right.
And that's a little bit of history we don't need to really belabor here. So that's a little overview of traffic nets and traffic handling, and that's about all I wanted to say right off the top of my head here. I will, however, take questions from anyone who's interested to ask one or more.
Tom, was that helpful?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Yeah, I had no idea all this organization had already been established. But so in essence, unless you're already dialed into one of these nets and you'd be useless in an actual emergency.
Well, useless is a strong word. I mean,
Yeah.
we will be active if there is a major emergency. We will be active. We'll handle any traffic that is brought to us. And there are situations where people might need to use CW. Like there are stations that don't have capability to do anything other than CW. There are quite a few people that have, for instance, QRP rigs that just are CW only. And if one of those people is in distress and needs help, they might use that radio to call. We will be there. To pick up that message as best we can.
And
Incidentally,
that might be on non-emergency, non-net frequencies too.
yeah,
I mean, we're all part of it.
yeah.
So
Also, I just wanted to put out an advertisement. The Oregon Section Net, of which I am the net manager, and I do net control 3 nights a week, meets on 3569 kilohertz at 6:30 p.m. local time every day. So any of you are more than welcome to check into that net. Doesn't matter how good your CW is. If you can send your call sign, we'll be glad to hear from you.
and that'll work statewide typically.
Yeah, we try. I mean, lately the conditions have been very, very iffy at that time of day. This time of the year, 6:30 p.m. is a bad time for 80 meters because the sun is still up and the D layer is still strong, which means signals don't travel very far. When we get more towards the equinox, we'll get better statewide propagation on 80 meters. There are various resolutions of that have been proposed. Some people say, well, you should run the net later during the summer, but that's too hard on people's schedules because, like, some people actually work for a living and they have schedules they have to adhere to. But, you know, we have always kept that on the same local time and we just deal with the problems that come
Well,
up.
and it's not that it won't work because I check into the District 5 Aries net every Sunday at 4:30 p.m. on 80 meters, on 75 meters, and it works.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
Well,
so it's not great sometimes, but it works.
well, yeah, the Oregon section net works great within maybe 100 miles of
Mhm.
where you are, or maybe a little less, depending. And things vary because the ionosphere is, variable. Um, but it's when you're trying to pick up people in Eastern Oregon or Southern Oregon. I mean, I have some regular stations. Like there's one down near Roseburg. Like sometimes I hear him and sometimes I don't. There's another one out in Baker City. Sometimes I hear him and sometimes I don't, and I do my best. He probably hears me, and I can't hear him because, as the net control, I try to have a loud signal, so I turn my radio up to a kilowatt and do my best to burn the ionosphere. And hopefully, people hear me, and I'm sure they're frustrated when they answer, and I can't hear them, but that's just the way it goes. Part of the
Well,
fun of radio.
and the other thing is that wherever you happen to live, you are in an ARRL section, and the ARRL, which you'll note I put up there, stands for the American Radio Relay League. That word relay, this is exactly what relay is. It's traffic handling. It's right in the name of the organization. Every section has a section net, has a group of traffic handlers. Every section.
Yeah. And
So
also, if I can't reach that guy in Baker City or I can't hear him, there might be another station in between that can. There might be a station in the Dalles, for instance, that hears the guy in Baker that I don't hear, and he can relay into me. And this is very commonly done. You often hear a net control station ask for relays, QSP. He'll say any QSP question mark. And folks, I got to run because actually
you
Oregon
got to go run the
Section
net.
Net is going to be called up in just a few minutes. So I have to run away within the next 3 or 4 minutes and get ready for that. But thank you for your attention. I'm always glad to help anybody that wants further conversation. Scott can give you my email address. And you could guess it if you actually know how ARRL net email addresses work. But thank you again. Good night.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks for your help. Very interesting. I appreciate your time.
Bye-bye. Anytime.
All right. So now you get some idea of traffic handling, everyone. So that was a nice little segue, Tom, and I appreciate you bringing that up because traffic handling is an area that I really haven't gotten into in my life. In 38 years on the air and almost 40 years of having a license, I've never done traffic handling. And it's one of those things that I would really like to, but I just haven't yet. So All right. Anybody have any questions or comments about what they've been studying and stuff like that? How they're doing? And remember, you got 3 days until the next class after today. So that gives you lots and lots of opportunity to get on the air and do stuff. Conditions are good. 40 and 40 meters at night should be great.
Question about traffic handling.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to hear about an international, the open calling sequence for people who are stranded someplace and they have an emergency. And so maybe on the hour, they might send out their signal and into nowhere, except would it eventually end up with a traffic handler like Carl to connect you to whatever?
Depends if somebody hears it.
Yeah.
Depends if someone hears it. If somebody picks it up, then yeah.
So anybody that picks it up could relay it on. Ultimately, it would get to somebody in a position to do what?
Anybody, well, pass it to somebody who may be able to help. I mean, you know, here's the funny thing. Anybody can turn into to somebody who can help out in an emergency,
Right.
just like that. Like there was a ham who was out around Blue Pool a couple of years ago, and I was listening to this, and he came across a hiker who had fallen and I think broke a leg, and couldn't get up, couldn't walk, didn't want to transport him. And if you know where Blue Pool is, it's not really close to anything. But with their handheld, they were able to get into one of the repeaters that's connected to the 145.13 PRA system, and they basically, had free run of that frequency. They passed all the information to somebody else who passed it to emergency services, and ended up meeting them at the trailhead where an ambulance was waiting.
So it's relay after relay.
Yep, you never know how things are going to work. So that's why that's one of the things that we can do. No cell service, and in that particular place, radio worked. So that's what they used. And then apparently the guy's radio, he put it on the hood of his car, and then he backed up and then proceeded to drive over it. We bought him, a bunch of people bought him a new radio.
When he said to go to his DN3, did he mean go 3 kilohertz down
down 3? Yeah.
Okay.
From where you are, from the net frequency, go down 3. And so, for instance, like here. Okay, let's see if everybody can hear. Can everybody hear that?
Yes.
Okay, what's this word?
Up.
Okay, so what is this? Everybody should hear that you should know that in your sleep. Come on, everybody.
CQ.
CQ. Okay, so. Okay, then my call. Okay, so what did I just say? CQ, N7JI. What did I send at the end of that? Up. What that means is that I am expecting a large enough number of people that I want you to call me up from where I am. I could also
What
say
does
down.
that mean?
That means adjust your transmitter so that you're listening right on that frequency, but that you transmit, let's say, a kilohertz or 2 kilohertz up. You know that little button on your radio that says split? If you have an HF rig, it's a little button that says split. Jim, you've got one, right? Jim, oh, that's right. Jim's got laryngitis. Okay, who's got a button that says split on their radio?
I do.
Okay, so what do you ever use that split button?
On occasion.
I use it all the time because I chase DX, and DXpeditions always say, which is up. That split button separates the transmit and receive frequencies. So they're listening up, which means they want you to transmit above where you're listening. So Lois, you also have a split on your
I know.
little 817.
I have lots of things on that little radio.
Mm-hmm. And I have used the 817 for contesting, so I know it has a little split control. It also has a it also has an R it also has an RIT, which is a receiver incremental tuning. You can also, if your radio has it, most of them do, has something called an XIT. Let me switch back here. Which is transmitter incremental tuning, which allows you to move your transmitter frequency a little bit, a couple of kilohertz. So if you don't like to use the split control, you can use the XIT, but just remember when you're done to put it back to 0 or turn it off. Otherwise, you'll be off frequency.
So could
So
you say that again? If you change your frequency a couple of kilohertz, using the split will allow you to be on both somehow?
well, when you key your radio, it changes the transmit frequency so that the other station can hear you and they're telling you to call them off frequency. They're intentionally telling you to call them off frequency. So let me see if I can find a perfect example of this. I'm going to bring up our web SDR and hope that I get a good example of this today. Because, as it turns out, remember the other day I said, "Where's a good DXpedition when you need one?" Does everybody remember? Does anyone remember me saying that the other day? Where's a good DXpedition to listen to when you need one? Well, I did say that.
Yes, it is.
I did say that. And I said, where's a good DXpedition when you need one? So what I'm hoping is that this good DXpedition that is out there right now is actually there, because they've been very active in the last couple of days, and I just have to see.
One 27.
Okay, hold on, let me mute that. So part of this is we're going to look for DX Summit. Is everyone familiar with DX Summit?
No.
DX Summit is a spotting network. It is tied into all of the global spotting networks out there. This is essentially a real-time database of people who have heard other stations on frequencies and report they're being heard.
I use DX Watch.
They're all based on the same essentially the same engine.
Yeah.
So we want to look for any instance of N5J and hope that phone, digital. Yeah, they don't have any stations on C. Well, no, that was an hour ago, unfortunately.
On 2127, there was a N5J.
Yeah, that's the one. N5J.
Yeah, okay.
They're on Jarvis.
Yeah, okay.
And what I was hoping is that they would still be there, and we could actually take a listen to a crazy expedition that was going on. Unfortunately, they're not transmitting on CW, but then I could show you what a pileup really looks like and why you would want to ever use split. Let's see. Let's see. I didn't take any good video, but oh, here's a good one on Swains.
What is the difference between DSLR, mirrorless, and point-and-shoot cameras?
Okay, everybody ready?
DSLR or digital.
Okay, does everybody see all of those lines? Okay, each one of those is a signal. Okay, you see that? You see how that just became completely filled with signals? Each one of those little vertical lines there is somebody transmitting. The station on the left, that's the green line. That is the DX station that's transmitting. And he said up there was UP, da-da-da-da-da-da, and now tuning around with the red line, looking and sifting through all those stations calling. And let's see if he picks one. There's the one. So all those stations that you see are all calling at the same time. So what is the benefit of moving them off frequency? What is the benefit of moving them off frequency?
So they can hear the primary station.
So everybody can hear the station that's calling.
Yeah.
In other words, we've basically taken, if they answered on the exact same frequency, they would obliterate the station that was calling in the first place. And that's why we do split. And that's why you would send. That's why you would send, which is up. All right. So everybody ready to copy some code? Let's hear what you guys have been dealing with that hasn't made you happy in the last couple days, other than lack of time and practice, because I can't control that. Come on, nobody?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What's a reasonable buffer length that you could keep in your head? Like I can keep like a couple letters and then I forget what came before it as I'm trying to translate the next one.
I don't know. I mean, everybody's different. Everyone's brain works a little differently. I can hear whole paragraphs, and at some point you sort of forget, but you remember the gist. I mean, you probably don't remember every single word I've said, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
At some point, you start to buffer up words when copying letters is not a big deal anymore. When you stop having to focus on working hard to copy letters and they just sort of form, then you're on to, buffering up words. Like
Okay.
for instance, let me send a word. Ready? Everyone get it?
Yes.
All right, what is it?
Lois.
Lois. Okay. So the question is, were you able to buffer that?
No, I didn't.
So when did you start to lose it?
After the O.
Okay. Well, let's slow down and see if that helps.
Yeah, that's much easier. Yeah.
Let's see, that helps. Okay. That means you just got to work on faster recall.
Okay.
I mean, like that name is the same as this. Or this. Whether they come in faster or slower, it's still the same. It's still the same letters.
Yeah.
It's just about practicing and getting better at recall.
Okay.
Because again, what we're aiming for is, as instantaneous without thinking about it to the point where it becomes second nature. So, like, here's another one.
John.
That's John. Okay, how about this one?
Jose.
Jose, how about this?
That one I didn't get. Yeah, you're right. I just need to work on getting the letters to recall faster.
Yeah, because basically, instead of using your brain power to just hear them and buffer up letters, it's being spent on decoding what the letters are and having to concentrate.
Yeah.
All right, so did anybody get that name?
Ricky.
Ricky. Okay, how about this one? I get to do it again. Did you get it, Russ?
It's me.
Yeah, it's you. Okay. But now we're going to go for something else. Here we go. Anyone get that?
Richard.
We got Richard. Okay. Okay, let's go for another name. Ready? How about anyone get it?
Rocky.
We got Rocky.
Yeah.
Okay. How about this one? Here we go.
Thomas in A.
Thomasina. Yeah.
Oh, Thomasina.
Yeah. So we got Thomasina. So
I thought you were done after Thomas, so
see
I stopped,
that,
and then come the N, and then I go, then I thought you were done after N, and then it came in the A.
But see, and here's the trick. Can you edit in your head? That's another thing too. You think a word is done, and it's really not, and you haven't had the long gap between words to cue you in that there's another one coming. So let me. Okay. Let me see. I am going to send a sentence. All right? It's not very long. Here we go. All right, that's the whole sentence. Now, I don't want to hear that you copy. I don't want to hear the copy, but did anybody copy it?
Some of it.
Some of it? Okay, well, I'm going to send it again. Here we go. It's good practice for me. Armstead's
I
laughing.
got the first two words. You can.
You
And that was
can,
it.
yeah. I know Armstead got it because he's laughing. Am I correct?
I got lost after the third word. You can
Okay.
save, and then I'm completely lost.
Okay. Russ, did you get it?
You can save 15% by switching to Geico.
Yes, that's exactly right.
I missed a couple letters, but I got the bulk of them.
Okay, so are you writing or are you listening in your head?
I was writing because I had to. I've been
Okay.
away from this so long. I'm trying to pick it back up again.
Okay,
I got
Well-
15%. You can say 15%,
okay,
but I was in my head, and that's all I could do in my head.
okay. Well, here it is again. Now that you know that it is, you can save 15% by switching to Geico. Here it is again. Okay. So everyone's gonna. Now I should say, this class is not sponsored by Geico. It would be nice if they paid for my Zoom bill, but they don't. They don't even know I'm here. So, okay, so let's hear what part of that trips you up. And don't be shy with your experiences. This is how we learn. We help each other.
Well, I just seem to run out of space when I'm head copy, and I can get so far, and then I'll hear a character that throws me just a little bit, then I'm done.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, okay, like if I say, let's do this. Russ, repeat the sentence.
You can save 15% by switching to Geico.
Okay, with a period at the end, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now, once you have you, and you know that that's, you can save, right?
Yes.
You don't have to think about that anymore because, okay, can you remember those words? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So once they're in there, you're no longer dealing with decoding letters. You're dealing with just remembering words.
Yes.
So again, that's really what we're going for. Unless you're specifically trying to send message traffic, which is what Carl was doing, which is exact copy of stuff. But you can scribble stuff down, and the word you, oh, you, as opposed to copying every letter.
Knowing
So
what the sentence was, I was able to like send it as it went through. I could in my head send the letter now that I knew what it was as I was following you sending it.
all right, anything else? Anybody else?
I
Is
also
there,
go ahead.
Go ahead,
Go
Tom.
ahead.
sorry, is there a strategy for once you miss a letter and now the
Move
next letter
on.
came out and you didn't quite hear it? Is there a strategy for how to pick it back up again?
That's everybody. I know what mine is.
I
And
just ignore it.
it's really hard because you want to go and try to figure out what it was that you missed. That's our natural inclination. And it unfortunately it snowballs.
I have an even more difficult problem. Is sometimes I'm expecting a character
Yes.
and it doesn't show and it doesn't come in,
Yes.
and
It's
that
a
throws
different
me.
word. It's a different word than you thought. You got the
Yeah,
first three and you thought it was going somewhere,
yeah,
and it's not.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
had that exact problem when you switched from the numbers. I was doing good. You can save 15. Then
Hmm.
I was expecting another number, and that's when you switched, and it kind
Yep.
of blew me out of the water.
Uh-huh. Yep. And that's where, like, but you also know that there's a longer gap, which means that word is done. So that's where just that's where if you're good at if you're good copying letters and it's instantaneous, then there's enough time left for you to know, oh, that was short break. Now this is a long gap, right? It's 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 just like it's like trying to understand a foreign language. It really is. The more fluent you are, the faster you are at decoding it, the easier it becomes to get the whole thing. And the only way to do that is just practice and fluidity. And all the practice in the world makes you better at it. And you gotta give yourself some slack. Okay, let's see. I have another one. Okay, ready? Here we go.
I don't know what three up.
Close. I don't know what. Say it again.
I don't know what three up.
Okay, that's close. That's a start. And then after that three, you lost the rest of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But you got the first part. I don't know what three. And I know Russ,
Is Mars?
yeah, that's in there. So you got back in,
Exactly.
but you missed some of it. So, all right, I'm going to send it again. Whoops. Okay. How about that one? For those of you who came close, how about the second time through?
I don't know what 3 plus 3 is on Mars.
I don't know what 3 plus 3 is on Mars.
Period.
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 Yeah. Right? I don't know what 3 plus 3 is on Mars. I assume it's 6, but maybe it's not. Right? So what I just did was send you, let's see, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By the way, you just passed your 5 words a minute. There's enough characters there for you to pass 5 words a minute.
Wow.
Does anybody want to hear it again? Now that you know, I don't know what 3 plus 3 is on Mars. Want me to send it again? Okay, here we go. That was it. I assume it's 6. But I don't know for sure.
You using a straight key?
No, that was a paddle.
I was gonna say it's really clean.
Yeah, I mean I'm good with a straight key, but
I've heard you in a
not
straight
that
key.
good.
You are good.
Yeah, but I'm not that good. So, all right. Well, everybody, I've got a net to attend to. Jim, am I going to see
great.
you there? Ah, there's Ray.
Yes, I am going to be there, Scott. Switching over right now. Thank you.
I hope you feel well.
Thank you.
And we're going to do this again on Sunday at 5 o'clock. So I will.
Time to practice.
Yes. You have 3 days to practice. So.
Thank you.
Everyone, good work today.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
Thanks, Scott.